One of the most seen images of the whole holiday season is here for you today to stay curious as we celebrate what was the Star of Bethlehem. I'm Mark Marquette and saying welcome to our program today, a special holiday program about the most fabled star ever seen in the night sky. Think of the beautiful Christmas cards and holiday cheer cards that are being sent out this time of year. And whether you celebrate the Christian holiday of the birth of the Messiah Jesus Christ, or you celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or even Festivus for the rest of us, the Star of Bethlehem is something for all ages and a mystery and imagination that all peoples can appreciate. There's only one place where this star is talked about, and that's the Christian Bible. And we're going to talk about what it meant back in the time, who saw the Star of Bethlehem, who didn't is very important, and what could it have been in our night sky if not for the beautiful miracle that some of us want to believe, and that's fine. So we welcome everybody to this special Stay Curious program. Marty Winkle is our cameraman, my co-producer. We've got Connie McDaniel also helping in the studio today. Both are outstanding volunteers at our American Space Museum. We couldn't do without either one of them, Marty or Connie. So glad to have you in today. And I'm going to have a whole PowerPoint presentation racked up here to talk about in depth, but very understandably for all of you out there, what was the Star of Bethlehem. And the key figures of the Star of Bethlehem are the wise men, and we're going to talk in depth about them. But what I like setting the stage with is 2,000 years ago, the story unfolds of the Star of Bethlehem. But even 200 years ago, it's hard to imagine that no one in our country had electricity. It was just a little over 100 years ago, I think, that the White House had electricity in it. So it's hard to imagine how the night sky was so important in today's 21st century with light pollution robbing the night, as you will. And yet something was seen outstanding in the night sky. Today, people have no idle time to look up and study the stars, let alone from your backyard. There's only like a couple dozen of the brightest stars and planets, of course, if they're out like we are this season of 2020 with the planets Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars all visible in the night sky. That would have meant a lot to the ancient stargazers, and everybody was a stargazer because there was nothing out to look at night except for a fireplace, all right? So they imagined these wonderful stories about the patterns that they could see in the night sky. And these patterns are very key to our understanding of what the interpretation of the Star of Bethlehem would have meant to people that were familiar with the night sky. All the ancient people were very familiar with dark, starry skies and knew stories told by the stars. Every culture is full of mythological creatures and tales. Of course, we talk a lot about the Roman and Greek adaptations of the night sky. A passion play of Andromeda is going on right now, where Pegasus the horse is flying overhead. The Queen Cassiopeia and her troubled daughter Andromeda are in fighting with each other, and Andromeda's chained to a rock by Cetus the whale, and she's saved by Perseus, the hero who just slain the Gorgon's head. That is a quick mythological tale that's going on right now in our skies overhead. And we love reliving that story as amateur astronomers show you the dark sky. Well, find your local amateur astronomers over the holidays because they probably have a Star of Bethlehem planetarium show. I've done many of them over my years of astronomy, and this is an adaptation of that. But also let that astronomy club know that you want to see Mars through a telescope because we just got about another 2 months yet where Mars, the bright red object in the sky, will be visible in telescopes to see the surface of Mars till about March, and then it'll be too far away. Well, the story of the night sky 2,000 years ago is just like I related to you about the 21st century, knowing some of these mythological creatures. The story of the star is only in the Bible book of Matthew, all right? Luke talks about the birth of Jesus, but doesn't mention the star or the wise men. Let me get a little fuel to get me through here as we look again at a beautiful postcard depicting the wise men. Well, Matthew has 12 verses in the second chapter of Matthew, and it basically says, to paraphrase a little bit, in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is this child born the King of the Jews? For we have observed his star at the rising and have come to pay him homage." Well, this was a prediction of the Jewish people for centuries, that a king would be born and be a savior to all of the believers on earth. And King Herod, of course, was be threatened by a king of the Jews being born, thinking that, oh my gosh, they could anoint him at any age and I'm done. So, so he inquired where he was born, and then where was this star seen, as you continued, okay? Herod talked to these wise men, all right, said, "I haven't seen the star. Where is it?" And they said, "Well, it appears in the east where we came from." And then they left. And the star supposedly stopped over the place where the child was. And the wise men, overwhelmed with joy, they bring their offerings of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream, they did not go back and see King Herod. They went back to their country another path. Well, where was their country? Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. To find out about what the star was, we have to first be a little celestial history detective story here, which has been fun for amateur astronomers over the last 50 years, because only in the last 20-some years have we had computers on our desks that could be like a planetarium show and show us what the sky looked like. But back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, when it was very popular and people wanted to know more about the Star of Bethlehem, it was hard to figure out what was in the night sky without having to be in a library and doing all kinds of constellation timing. Had to figure out the time frame. Well, today you can just put like 2 BC, December 25th, and see what the sky is on that night. Well, and people have done that, and it's very exciting, and I've done that. You can do that on your smartphone planetarium in the sky that you have. If you can set the date for when the sky looks like when your birthday was, you can set the date for the time of when Jesus was born and try and figure out what was in the night sky, all right, when Jesus was born. Well, let's look at the clues. Jesus had to have been born when King Herod was alive. That's a no-brainer. So when we know when King Herod died, that'll give us the furthest date that we could find. And we'll get to that. There was a Roman tax involved. That's described in the Bible book of Luke. That's why Joseph and Mary had to go back to Bethlehem, was to pay their taxes. And not everyone saw the star. King Herod said, "Where is this star?" He didn't go out in his balcony and see it. Well, facts in the Bible of Luke and Matthew that we can't dispute suggest the birth of Jesus occurred in the spring of the year, all right? Shepherds were not out watching their sheep in the wintertime. Everybody was inside. It had to have been a nice warm day. The weather in Jerusalem is about like in the Midwest. They could have some snow and cold nights. So we're saying it was probably the spring of the year. Herod had to be alive, and it had to have been after the Roman tax edict that Joseph and Mary went from to Bethlehem to pay their taxes. He had to go there because that's where he was registered, apparently. Well, let's look at King Herod. Though scholars disagree, it's generally accepted that he died about 1 AD after an eclipse of the moon, where it was said that he walked out on his balcony and saw. He did not see the Star of Bethlehem. Very clearly he did not. And he ended up murdering all boys under age 2. All right, why would he do that and pick that age 2? Well, Jesus, he feared, was at least 2 years old, maybe, when the wise men visited him and told him about the Messiah. Or was this a little bit after? Unclear. The Magi were warned in a dream to avoid the king because he was going to kill him. He didn't want them going back and telling a new king had been born, because I'm the king, so he didn't want to get that rumor started, all right? But here is a nice little, look at his nice hair there for that guy. Check out his head hair there, and the beard and stuff, quite elaborate for the day as is depicted in this beautiful pen and ink of King Herod, famous figure of our story of the Star of Bethlehem. Well, the Gospel of Luke tells us that it was a virgin birth, all right? Roman tax edict is why Joseph and Mary were going to Bethlehem. And when they got there, there was no room in the inn, and angels and shepherds were there to worship the new baby Jesus born in a manger with the cattle and so forth in the barn, apparently. No mention of the wise men in Luke. Well, which tax edict were Joseph and Mary going to answer? This is the Roman Empire, about 117 AD in the red. The white is the Mediterranean Sea and other affiliated oceans there, or seas there. So for humble people like Joseph and Mary to answer this edict, they may have had to go, a week or so going back from where they were in Nazareth, okay, that area of the world. So, but it's been kind of narrowed by over the years of people doing these talks. About 5 BC census is what they probably answered. Or there was a big tax edict. Well, for them you probably had a year to go back and do it and so forth. So you start looking at the sky between 5 BC and 1 AD when Herod was born, and somewhere in there in the night sky is the Star of Bethlehem. Well, was Jesus born on December 25th, 0 AD BC? Well, certainly not. Okay. There's a good reason why we celebrate December 25th as the birth of Jesus. The early Christians could hide their celebration and love for their Messiah by pretending that they were observing the Saturnalia of the winter solstice that always happened around December 21st or 22nd, that became a tremendous winter celebration for Rome. They would have like Olympics going on, and they would have all kinds of pagan ties of debauchery going on during these festivals. A lot of animal sacrifices. And the Saturnalia of the Romans celebrated around the winter solstice that we just celebrated December 22nd. We're now into the first week of December is when Christmas happens. The first week of winter. Well, this winter solstice and the Saturnalia had a couple customs that are familiar to us. One is they decorated trees because a lot of the trees were bare of leaves, and they wanted to give them life with putting what we now call ornaments on them. And then gift giving was going into the new year by wishing someone a great year. Let me give you a gift for all the things you've done for me this year. Now, the first actual Christmas celebrated by Christians was in 336 AD, when Rome had become a Christian nation. It took 3 centuries for that to happen. All right, and under one of their leaders of the time, who became Christian in 33 decades later, 300 and some years, was the first celebration of Christmas. So we must look at the night skies between, say, 6 BC and 2 AD to of what's going on up there. And if you've got Stellarium is the planetarium program I use at home and on my phone. Think aquarium, stellar is stars, stellar aquarium. And that's a free download. Many of you have apps on your Apple devices, Android devices. Just go to your store and you can put in there a date. And then by manipulating the time, you can see quickly some of the planets moving up and down in the sky, and that's what we're going to do here. Keep in mind the true nature of stars as nuclear infernos of a nuclear reaction going on and emitting heat and light and energy in various wavelengths was not known until the 1800s, as we look behind me here. The first spectrograph of stars taken by John Herschel, the brother of the great observer William Herschel, done photographically, around the Civil War of America's time, 1860s. So we didn't understand that stars were like our sun, that our sun was just a star, all right, undergoing nuclear fusion as hydrogen is exchanged to helium. And in the universe, matter is not destroyed, it's always exchanged into a different format. The stars held mystery, imagination, and unknown influences on mankind. They still do. Here is the Pleiades rising above a mountain in Damascus, Virginia, with the Taurus the Bull. The red star above me is the Taurus the Bull, the eye, Aldebaran. And you see the Pleiades, the cluster above me. Ancient Native Americans used to think that Pleiades above me of 7 stars is where souls were escaping into the porthole of heaven when they died. Things like that was what was in the imagination and influence of the stargazing peoples all over the world. And of course, this involves putting names and patterns and boundaries on the stars of the sky, particularly those 12 patterns where the sun, moon, and 5 naked eye planets were always seen to wander, all right? Now, the sun, you couldn't see what star pattern it was, but they knew that the night sky during 6 months later was up in the daytime. So they could extrapolate that the sun was in the house of Leo, and therefore, bingo, your astrological sign is Leo, all right, or Aries, or Taurus, or Scorpio. And as the sun went around these houses, that had something to do with your destiny. Now, there was 5 wandering planets. The only other object that moved in the sky was, of course, the moon, and it went through phases, all right? Occasionally, they'd see a comet go through the sky. A comet in Greek means hairy star, all right? Hair is what coma means, so stars were hairy stars that moved through the night. They didn't understand those. In fact, they thought they were part of the atmosphere of Earth, including meteors. Meteors streaking through the night sky, they thought was a weather phenomenon. They being the ancients of thousands of years ago, Jesus' time, and all up till just really several hundred years ago when science said no, comets are objects way beyond our solar system that are sucked in by gravity, and they're ice balls like floating snowdrifts. Meteors are debris like sand and tiny rocks that burn up in our atmosphere. But back in the ancient world, they thought these were atmospheric phenomena. Even to up to the 1800s, they thought meteors were part of the atmosphere. Thus, you have meteorologists, our weathermen and women out there. So, but there was also 5 stars that would move up in the sky and move around and stay a little bit of time in each of these houses of the zodiac. And that's what they gave these houses. They thought they were places where they would influence man's destiny, all right? And rulers of kings and queens would have astrologers do their horoscopes, and that's why it's such a prominent thing in society today, though real astronomers like myself consider it to be the comic books of stargazing. But still, it's a good way to learn the outlines of some of the zodiacal constellations. Well, again, let's go back to Matthew and do our little investigative work again about what this Star of Bethlehem was. I'm setting it up for you with the star patterns in the sky, the planets that move among these houses of the zodiac. Some of the houses had names like the House of the Hebrew. That was Leo, where laws were governed. Virgo was the house of fertility, all right, where because it's has a star that looked like a sheath of wheat, spica in there, in color. Scorpio would be a decision nature maybe area. There was different things. It looked like a fish hook in the sky, so it could be many things for food and shelter. Taurus the bull usually meant hunting, all right, as the bull things. You kind of get the drift there. Gemini the twins holding hands, harmony, and so on and so forth. Well, again, the investigative work. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of Herod the king, and the Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. And they said they saw the star in the east, and that's always been a little controversial. Was the star physically in the eastern part of the sky, or were the wise men in feet in eastern part of Europe or east of Jerusalem when they came there? All right. And of course, when King Herod saw this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him, of course, because he's the king. Everyone's going to feel the way he feels. But he felt threatened. So he had every baby boy murdered from age 2 and under. What a horrible, horrible thing. And of course, Jesus escaped that, went to Egypt, lived several years in Egypt before coming back and doing his greatest work in Judea, what we now call Israel. The Magi are a very key to this, as you gather. They were the ones that saw it in the sky. 3 Magi, huh? Well, probably not. We're thinking 3 Magi because of the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. It was probably these were high priest stargazers. We'll talk about in a minute. Zoroastrian astrologers. And they were in a caravan. They probably had their wives with them. They had their concubines with them. They had their animals, their cats, their dogs, their slaves, their servants. There was probably 100 people. It was like a carnival came to town at that inn in Bethlehem. I guarantee it. Just wish we had some better reporters in the Bible to report some more details about it. A little bit about what Jesus looked like would help a little bit too, by the way. But I'm just having fun about, what we know is so limited and open to your imagination of what was going on with the Star of Bethlehem. The 3 Magi, like I said, there's probably 4 or 5 of them. They had their women. They had their support system with them, and they had these tokens were just not tokens of appreciation. These really meant something that the Magi were giving. In the Bible, they just didn't choose gold. That was the most valuable thing on earth. Frankincense was the perfume of the day, all right, and was a positive deity, not a devil deity, but had to do with the deities. And then myrrh was oil that was important for embalming and death. So these would be symbols of life and death and happiness to be giving the infant Jesus. A lot of camels too, Marty, with those. So here is the text out of the Bible. We've been reading that. So we have to first look at the night sky and what would be the most logical items that we can eliminate in the astronomical world, not astrological, but astronomy world, not your horoscopes, what can we discount that the Star of Bethlehem wasn't, all right? After all, I'm a good detective like Columbo. I'm going to eliminate things that couldn't be the Star of Bethlehem. So could it be a comet? Comets are very spectacular in the sky, though we haven't really seen a good comet. And I say we, the people who live in the last 50 years, you really get a good one 2 or 3 a century. And though we've had a few that are kind of bright, we haven't had one like the Wiseman we see in here and be so bright like Halley's Comet was in 1910. But it wasn't so bright in 1986. Had nothing to do with the comet. It's that the comet was on the other side of our orbit in 1986. And in 2010, it was like right beside us in the orbit. All right. But in 1986, it was on the other side. Those of you who live until 2062 will get a chance to see Halley's Comet, and it should be pretty good and bright. I'm not going to be seeing it, though, Marty. Not in 2062. Well, of course, comets, we wanted to mention, in the ancient world, meant something was going to happen fantastic. Either a cataclysmic event on Earth was going to happen, either there's going to be a shakeup in kings or queens. It usually meant a change in the destiny of mankind, and that's it. People took note of this, and you know, you think back, has there been any comets recently that the 21st century mankind may have gotten involved in and thought that it was an omen or a portent? Well, how about Comet Hale-Bopp in 1987 was the omen of death for the Branch Davidians cult. Remember those 24 people that drank poison and laid down on a bunk bed, and they all had Nike shoes on, and their supreme leader laid a triangular purple cloth over them, and then he took the spiked poison punch. They thought they were going to be riding in the tail of Comet Hale-Bopp there. The photograph I took of Hale-Bopp in 1987. It was a photographically very gorgeous, but it wasn't very big, or it was sort of bright in the sky. You could see it, but it wasn't as bright as, say, Jupiter and Mars are in the night sky tonight. So we look in the sky by looking at the records of the sky kept by these meticulous stargazers through centuries. And yes, Halley's Comet and a couple other bright comets were visible, but none of them within 30 or 40 years of our dates of 6 BC to 2 AD when we're looking for the Star of Bethlehem. How about a lunar or solar eclipse, Mark? Of course, that would be a great thing, a natural phenomenon that could be the eclipse to guide the wise men to the star, be the Star of Bethlehem that guided the wise men to the manger of Jesus. Well, that's easy to look up because everybody noticed lunar and solar eclipses. Solar eclipses, of course, during the day only last for a few minutes at the most, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. That wasn't what was going on for the Star of Bethlehem. That'd have been easy to figure that out. How about a lunar eclipse that lasts for a couple hours as the moon goes into the Earth's shadow and we see the curved shadow of the Earth taking a bite out of it, and then totality lasts for up to 40 to 50 minutes and the moon goes from real bright to ruddy red? That could be something that would signal a spectacular event going on, but nope, no lunar eclipses around this time frame of the birth of Jesus. Now, there were probably some lunar eclipses going on, but they wouldn't have been visible from this part of the world. Like I said, there's 2 stunning, but none around the birth of Jesus. There's a solar eclipse happening in a time frame, and then a lunar eclipse photograph that I took a couple years ago. How about a supernova? Nova is the word in Latin for new star, all right? A supernova is a star that explodes in the night sky and becomes so bright that it outshines everything. And some of these nova or supernova can be seen in the daytime. Now, that is what I thought was probably the Star of Bethlehem in my teenage years when I was investigating this on my own. And, you know, a supernova would stay in the same place in the sky and look like it's over a certain area of land by a kind of perspective deal. But so we look around, and the supernova would have been well known by all of the record keeper stargazers of the day. In fact, In 1054 AD, some 1,000 years after the birth of Jesus, there was a supernova that was seen in the daytime. It was so bright it cast a shadow in the daytime, like the sun, all right? The remnants of that supernova is on the left. That's what's called the Crab Nebula. It looks like a crabby type of shape in the telescope. Looks like a faint, puffy little cotton ball, actually, in the telescope. It's in Taurus the Bull. So in 1054 AD, people would go up and look in the daytime and see that. And then 4 or 5 months later, when it was dark where Taurus was, they would see, oh, there it is, the new star in Taurus the Bull. And then they fade away. It's a star that reaches the end of its life and it blows up. And it's a cataclysmic event. Sometimes it burps off an outer layer and then it blows up, and that faster speed of the second explosion will catch up with the first and intertwine like you see there in the Crab Nebula. A logical suspect, but no new stars in Jesus' time that we could call the Star of Bethlehem. Shooting stars, all right? Well, everybody's seen a shooting star, and there's meteor showers. Could a shooting star or meteor shower been the Star of Bethlehem? Not likely, because, as you know, they're fleeting. They don't last long except a shower. Once every 33 years, there is a shower called the Leonid shower, a Leo, that it does, like this woodcut on the left, that's from it. Meteors are falling from the sky like teardrops. It was incredible in 1999 when we saw this. So we're looking at it to happen again in 2031. So yeah, I could make it to that. But no, so there weren't any major meteor showers that were outrageous, like a meteor storm is actually what that was. They actually thought shooting stars were another weather event like lightning, all right? And just in the last 150 years did we figure out, mankind, astronomers, that this is debris, a lot of it like the size of a grain of sand or salt, burning up quickly as that energy is transferred into light by the friction in our atmosphere. No meteor shower, though, for meteors are predictable and well known to ancient stargazers. They would know the annual patterns. They didn't know what caused them. Like I said, they didn't know the Earth was plowing through a bunch of debris that's always there in our orbit, much like when you go over a bridge in the summertime that may have a bunch of mosquitoes swarming on it over the water, and you get a bunch of bugs on your windshield briefly that you didn't get further away from that stream. Rare bolides are too also fleeting, like sporadic meteors. A real bright meteor is called a bolide. Those just don't last long enough to direct the wise men. So you can eliminate the star, you can eliminate as being the star, comets, meteors, eclipses, and supernova or new stars. So what was the Star of Bethlehem? Well, the only ones who were to see it were the wise men. We call them Magi. We call them stargazers of today. The Magi were Zoroastrian priest astrologers from Persia, which is today's Iran and Iraq. All of antiquity, we know that the region of Mesopotamia, where the Garden of Babylon was and so forth, is the cradle of civilization. That is where today's Iraq and Iran is, those war-torn areas there. So historic to the beginnings of mankind thinking when looking up all of the why and the wherefore that we know about our universe today. These Magi of 2,000 years ago were right on the cutting edge of any of the stargazing tools and primitive, of course there were telescopes, but they had primitive things like sextants and others, and then started charting what they saw in the sky. And there's a lot of famous Arabic astronomers, and this is why we have a lot of Arabic names of stars up there. Aldebaran's in the sky right now, Sirius, Betelgeuse, All right. Betelgeuse is Arabic for armpit of the giant because that's a bright red star in Orion the Hunter. So many stars, a lot of them begin with AL. All right. For centuries, Zoroastrian priests looked for a sign in the heavens of a Hebrew Messiah predicted in the Old Testament book of Micah, chapter 5, verse 2. This was a huge thing to the ancient Hebrews, that just like today to the Christians, waiting for the return of Jesus as he's promised in the book of Revelations in the Bible. What did the wise men see? All right. Well, the wise men are seeing what all stargazers at the time that noted things and reported to the kings and queens their horoscopes. First, the planets were wandering among these fixed star patterns, the houses of the zodiac. Mercury was the fastest. It would go around the sun about four times a year. They didn't know it was going around the sun, but it would pop up in the evening sky twice a year and the morning sky twice a year. They called it the fastest messenger. It was the fleet messenger of the Roman gods. Also, some cultures had Mercury as two objects, Vesperus and Hesperus, because they didn't know the morning star was different from the evening star. Also, with Venus, that we see in the morning and evening. You never see Mercury or Venus at midnight or after 10 o'clock at night. They're always setting because they're close to the sun. They're between the Earth and the sun. Venus, because of its white light, was known for purity and beauty, and that makes sense. Mars, that we see in our night sky in the east right now, is red, war and power. Obviously, it looks like a drop of blood when you go out here this Christmas season. Jupiter looks directly overhead right now. It is purely gold, gorgeous. Mars and Jupiter are about the same brightness. Jupiter, because of the gold colored, they were given it the king of the gods. And it's just a coincidence that it is the biggest of all of our planets and the king of all of the solar system, except the sun, of course. Saturn, the final fifth planet and wanderer of the night sky, was the god of harvest because it had a yellowish tint to it like wheat. And so the word planets in Greek means wanderer. And thus these planets are wandering around the stars, all right, these fixed patterns. Mercury, 4 times it's up in different parts of the sky. Venus, usually it's in the morning sky for about 6 months, in the evening sky about 6 months. So it goes through different constellations as it moves. Mars takes 2 years to go around. So it stays about 2 months or more in each of those 12 houses of the zodiac. Jupiter orbits in 12 years, so it stays in each house of the zodiac for about 1 year. So the king of the gods has got important business to do every year with each of the houses to get them in order. And then Saturn takes 30 years to orbit the sun, so it stays in each house of the zodiac for over 2 years. This is how the ancients would have known the rhythm of the skies up there and plugged in the significance of these planets into what they interpreted the houses of the constellations meant in the zodiac. So, in modern world, a conjunction is when a planet is close to another planet or the moon or the sun. We call these gatherings conjunctions in the sky. And here we see the moon up above. Venus is the brightest star. To the left is Jupiter, and Mercury's at the very bottom. And they are all in the constellation Aquarius, a water sign. So maybe ancients could interpret that the moon is trying to get advice about how to get water from Jupiter, and we've had a drought lately. So this is May. All right. So they would be thinking, oh, we've had a drought, so it's going to get, we're going to have some wet weather coming our way because Jupiter's talking to Aquarius about it. And the messenger Mercury's come up to relay the information. This is how the ancient world thought about their night sky. And that sets the stage for what is a explanation for the Star of Bethlehem. Here you have 4 planets. And I'm gonna show them right here in the twilight sky. Okay, and you can even see Mercury just barely at the bottom is a street light, and Mercury's above it to the left. Jupiter, Mars, Venus are all in Leo the lion. And Leo, being bold and brave, was thought of a house of authority where Jupiter would be getting advice about war, possibly with Mars. And Venus is up there, maybe is thinking, well, we've got to think peace also. And Mercury, the messenger, is going to relay the word. So, could there have been conjunctions around the Star of Bethlehem? And you betcha, as we are concluding our detective work at looking at what the Star of Bethlehem could have been. Now, at the bottom, I've got two conjunctions, one June 17th, 2 BC, and another one August 20th, 1 BC. And on both of these events, the planets Venus and Jupiter got so close to each other that they merged as one star. That would be something that would have created a lot of interest. As you set back the clocks and look at how these planets were moving before June 2 BC, in the spring, Venus popped up. This is in the sunset. It popped up in the evening sky, and then as it got closer and closer to Jupiter, the anticipation would have gone on for several months of watching this until finally they merged as one in the sky. Well, has this happened in recent time? Yes, it has. It kind of happens sort of frequently because Venus is always popping up and down. Like I said, it moves so fast in the sky. Twice a year, it's either in the morning or evening sky. Jupiter, being slower, is still can be there when Venus comes close. Well, in June 30th of 2015 and November 13th of 2017, we had a close conjunction of Jupiter and Venus again. And fantastically, this is what was going on in July of 2016, taking off of that stellarium program. We're near Regulus, the star that is the regal star. The Regulus literally means the regal one or the king. In Leo the lion, these two stars met looking west just after sunset. And there's the photograph I took of it a couple days before, so you can see the conjunction of June 28th, 2016 in Leo the lion with Regulus nearby. Could this have been the Star of Bethlehem, two planets appearing as one in June 2 BC? Certainly it could have been. In fact, a lot of astronomers think that this is the passion play in the sky that was going on for over a year as Jupiter and Venus flirted with each other. Mars got into the act, and as the seasons changed and the Earth moved, the ancients didn't know that the Earth was moving. They didn't know that that's why the Earth going around the sun, why these objects were moving like they were. But that is what's happening with the Star of Bethlehem, and what we think is the most plausible explanation for it. Or a simple miracle. You're welcome to believe a simple miracle all you want, of course, because the real message of the season is the birth of the Messiah is the real star of our Christian community season and celebration of Christmas. And with that, we do wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or like I said, Festivus for the rest of us out there, as I hope you've enjoyed what I always enjoy talking about, what could have been the Star of Bethlehem. Thank you for watching it, Ophelia Sauterelle in France, Bill Whiting. Hope you have a Merry Christmas, friend. He's a new person with Doug Forrest that we met this year. So many new people we met this year, Marty. Steve Hammer, thank you for your kind words. Steve is Next week, we're going to talk about a top 10 of the year, and Steve sent his in. Tom Usiak, thank you, Tom, for your friendship this year, and your brother Mark up there in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Merry Christmas to both of you. Christina Smith is in Luxembourg. Christina was in the house just yesterday. We gave you a shout out. And David there, she was with the working for SES, the largest satellite company in the world. Merry Christmas to you, Christina, in Luxembourg. Christopher Mix in Huston, Wisconsin. He's been watching Stay Curious almost all 700 episodes. Cynthia Rossi, you have a great Space Coast Christmas. Emily Carney, thank you, Space Hipster #1, for tuning in to Stay Curious, and we hope to see you soon right here in the chair beside me, Emily. She's the founder of Space Hipsters. I know you all better be members of that Facebook group. John Christman's watching. Carlton Bailey. Hey, Carlton, give you a shout out. Tony Achilles. Merry Christmas to you, my friend. Dave Stangy. It's 7 degrees up there in Michigan. My mom's in Findlay, Ohio. It's 40-degree winds are blowing for about a 50-degree wind chill. It's horrible. Larry Pusker, I know you can't wait to get out of Michigan to get down here and warm up, and we look forward to seeing all of you in 2023 as we are blessed at this holiday season with wonderful friends and a great following on Stay Curious. And I couldn't do it without my good friend and my so-called big brother, Marty Winkle. Thank you, Marty, for a great year of Stay Curious. And again, we will keep raising the bar on our wonderful little show here to help you stay curious. So, well, that's all for us until after Christmas. We are going to take Monday off next week and start Tuesday shows. We'll have 4 shows next week. We have 2 guests coming in. We're going to talk about with some level 4 engineers on the Hubble telescope. And then we're going to hear all about moon water. You betcha, you're going to be drinking moon water next year. And then we're going to do a year-end 2022 of some of the highlights in space and astronomy. So until then, on behalf of our American Space Museum, I'm Mark Marquette, wishing you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays. Everybody, please be safe. And you in this frightful winter up there, hope that your electricity stays on, and we're sending warm thoughts your way. Until we see you again to bridge the space between us, I'm Mark Marquette saying again, Merry Christmas.